This is an idea that I thought of while researching the Shaded Castle. It's one you're probably not going to agree with at first, or at all. But this game has so many loose ends and open trails that I think the evidence is worth putting forward. Let's see what you think. Please note that I use in-game information to support my ideas, but this is a theory nonetheless. I am not claiming for this interpretation to be canon, I'm simply offering another angle for you to consider. Who knows? Maybe something even crazier will come from this? When the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. While born Empyreans with the potential to become the strongest of all of America's children, Malenia and Miquella were also destined to suffer a life of terrible afflictions. It would seem that when God split into two beings and reproduced with themselves, there is a chance for the offspring to be affected in such a way, as we know, Miquella is forced to maintain the eternal body of a child, while Malenia is infected with the ever-consuming scarlet rot. Either that, or the Greater Will, the outer god for which America was selected as the vassal for, intentionally applied these afflictions as a means to punish America for attempting to go against its will. These potential godchildren were not ones to just accept their fates, however. Miquella dedicated his life to the way of unalloyed gold and sprouting the Haligtree. These were direct rebellions against the outer gods, most directly the Greater Will. The unalloyed gold was a way to ward off the influence of the outer gods, and as we learn through Millicent's questline, it can even stave off the dreadful scarlet rot. The Haligtree was meant to be a replacement to the Erdtree, and would hopefully bestow the same powers upon the divine family without the outer gods or the Greater Will having the ability to infiltrate or influence Miquella's will. For those of you who don't know, the outer gods are the beings who kind of watch over the lands between. The Greater Will is the one we know the most about, as the two fingers are its means of communication within the world. The Greater Will is the one who sent the Elden beast to embody order and supplant its influence upon the lands between through the Erdtree. The other confirmed outer gods are the Frenzied Flame, who controls the Three Fingers ending, the Formless Mother, whom Mohg seeks the power of cursed blood from, and the Sealed God of Scarlet Rot, who we know can infect others who then have the ability to bloom into a god or goddess of rot themselves. I say confirmed because there are other theorized gods, such as the Blood Star. So as Miquella was actively fighting against the influence of these outer gods, what was Malenia doing? She was fighting a war within herself, looking for any means to seal away her rot, and with it the god of rot itself. If you've researched anything about Malenia, you'll know that she had a mentor, a swordsman with a flowing blade who helped her gain wings of unparalleled strength. Who was this mentor? Through the Blue Dancer charm and the flowing curved sword descriptions, we learn the following. The dancer in blue represents a fairy who, in legend, bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman. Blade in hand, the swordsman sealed away an ancient god, a god that was rot itself. Legends speak of a master of the sword garbed in blue, and his curved blade that was patterned like flowing water. And finally, with the prosthesis wearer heirloom, we are told that, though born into the accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. We also know exactly where this god of rot was sealed away. The Lake of Rot map description reads, a great lake of standing water downstream of the Ainsel River. It is said that the divine essence of an outer god is sealed away in this land. Now this is where things start to get interesting. Thanks to user Akash the Boss, I was pushed to look more into the meaning of both the Siofra and Ainsel rivers, the two giant underground rivers within the lands between. These are areas in Elden Ring that are accessible via lifts inside of designated wells and will get you closer to the Eternal Cities Nokron and Nokstella. But how deep does it go? Well, let's look at Siofra. In Irish and Gaelic, Siofra means a sprite or a fairy. That's easy enough. We know there is a fairy who bestowed the swordsman with a flowing sword. If you couple that with the knowledge that the god of rot was sealed away by said swordsman downstream of the Ainsel River, we can connect the dots and begin to understand that these two rivers, in name alone, can weave us a story of a future goddess, her mentor, and her struggle to fight her curse. We've defined Siofra, so let's take a look at Ainsel, our other main character here. Allow me to tell you a tale. If you search Ainsel, you'll find many similar ones. The one I am reading will be linked in the description if you are curious. A widow lived with her son in a cottage with many good folk, or elves and fairies living about it. One night her son would not go to bed, so she went to sleep on her own. A small fairy girl came down the chimney and told him that her name was My Own Self, and the boy told her that he was just my own self too. They played together for a time, and when he stirred up the fire, a spark landed on her foot and made her cry out. The fairy's mother's voice came down the chimney, demanding to know what had happened. The girl said just my own self had burned her foot. Her mother told her that if she herself did it, then she shouldn't make such a fuss about it. And a long arm came down the chimney to pull the girl back up. The boy was so frightened that he learned his lesson and went to bed when his mother told him to. My own self. My own self. My own self. Where have we seen this sentiment before? Bingo! Malenia'S mother and father were both two sides of the same coin, parts of a single divine being who were not only opposite in action at times, but one was a dude and the other is freaking waifu. Not to mention the fact that one of the leading theories on Ranni is that her and Malenia are actually one and the same, something that I personally find quite intriguing. If you watched my Shaded Castle video, you'll know I initially thought that, due to translation differences, the use of his and Swordsman would not be so specific in the original Japanese of the item descriptions. But after learning of the story of Ainsel, the pieces just kind of fell into place. Allow me to propose the following. Malenia is the Swordsman in blue, and the Swordsman in blue is Malenia. They are two beings of the same divine life force, with the Swordsman being created out of Malenia'S desperation to seal away the Scarlet Rot. Let's get the first obvious fact out of the way, the blind part. Yes, the Swordsman is blind, but so is Malenia. If you look at her face, she clearly does not have what we would consider to be eyeballs. Number 2, we will look at the fighting styles. Obviously, a pupil will have the same fighting style as her master, but how would a daughter that has no relationship with Malenia know this fighting style?
Again we meet. I can only surmise our purposes are aligned. In which case, allow me to explain myself. I am of Malenia'S blood, but in what capacity I know not. I could be sister, daughter, or an offshoot. Whatever the case though, I am certain of a kinship between us.
The skill I am speaking of is the Waterfowl Dance. Not only is it the signature move of Malenia, but if you fight Millicent as an invader, she is able to perform the same technique. Couple this with the fact that Millicent's Shamshir in this fight has a design that roughly matches up with the flowing curved sword, the sword of the Swordsman in blue, then you start to see that maybe the fighting style is actually genetic. After all, I think it's pretty much accepted at this point that Millicent and her sisters are some sort of direct clone budding sprouts of Malenia'S Aeonia Blossom in Caelid. Let me also offer you this piece of evidence. Let's check out the hand of Malenia, Malenia'S sword. Its description says, blade built into Malenia'S prosthetic arm. If you take a close look at this sword in combat, you will see that Malenia'S prosthetic arm does in fact have a contraption that attaches to this sword to make it one with her arm quite literally. If you have done, or at least know of Millicent's side quest, then you know in order to complete it, you need the Valkyrie's prosthesis item. That item says, golden prosthesis once used by the one-armed Valkyrie. A masterwork of craftsmanship, with practice and skill it can be used as proficiently as a real arm. If we assume that the hand of Malenia was built into her new prosthetic arm when she put that into commission, then we have to wonder what sword did she wield prior to that 9-foot-long pull of death Miyazaki calls a katana? Well, that would be the flowing curved sword itself. Not only does it kind of match up design-wise with Millicent's Shamshir, it is also found as you adventure through the consecrated snowfield. This is a hidden area in the game only accessible with the Haligtree medallion and this is the path to Miquella's Haligtree. Okay, so you think there's a chance that Malenia split herself and became her own mentor. Don't forget that the river Ainsel, which leads to the Lake of Rot where the God of Rot was sealed, generally refers to my own self. So then, what happened to the Swordsman? When the God of Rot was sealed away, most likely somewhere around the Grand Cloister, we know that Malenia'S rot was at least under control. We know the Grand Cloister near the Lake of Rot is relevant because that is where we find the Scorpion Stinger, which is a dagger that's described as a ceremonial tool used by heretics, crafted from the relic of a sealed outer god.
There is something I must return to Malenia. The will that was once her own. The dignity. The sense of self. That allowed her to resist the call of the Scarlet Rot. The pride she abandoned. To meet Radahn's measure.
If we take Millicent's words at face value, we understand that once Malenia reached a state of desperation and unleashed the rot, she also broke the control that herselves helped maintain previously. Her first blossom had taken place, and she was on her path to taking root in the lands between as the new goddess of rot. If we take a look at Clean Rot Knight Finlay's ashes, we learn the following. Finlay was one of the few survivors of the Battle of Aeonia, who in an unimaginable act of heroism carried the slumbering demigod Malenia all the way back to the Haligtree. She managed the feat alone, fending off all manner of foes along the way. When you initially encounter Malenia in her fight, she is still comatose, awoken by your presence. It must have been years of her power lying dormant, waiting for her brother to ascend, who was no longer even there. Now let's take a look at the blue cloth cowl. The headpiece of the blue cloth set, purchased from the isolated merchant in Raya Lucaria, and what is most likely the set that the blind swordsman wore in the legends. It says, Cowl of a Nomadic Warrior. The blue color of its fabric symbolizes brisk waters, as fluid and flowing as the sword in the hand of its wearer. Just as still water turns foul, stagnation leads to decay. Warriors must remain ever drifting. This leaves, in my opinion, 3 options for the swordsman's fate. 1. In Malenia'S slumber, the swordsman could not join in the stagnation and simply ventured away from the lands between. Number 2. Malenia being in that comatose state was too weak to maintain an entire separate being. The swordsman withered away with time as Malenia slept at the Haligtree. And 3. Being born from Malenia'S own being, the swordsman was himself inflicted with rot and eventually decayed away and died. My personal favorite of these is number 2, but I'm curious to see what you think. Do you think any of this is even possible at all, or am I totally grasping at straws here? Let me know down in the comments below, and feel free to leave speculation of your own of what the river names may mean, who the swordsman is, or anything else you feel like sharing. I absolutely love reading your thoughts and interacting with you about this game. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, as that helps YouTube show these ideas to more people. If you're new here, welcome and thanks for checking out my videos. Feel free to subscribe for more Elden Ring content in the future. I stream every single night over at twitch.tv/precision, so feel free to stop in and say, hey, let's play some games and speculate live sometime. As always, thank you so much for coming through and watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.